Wow. Let me, okay. So, wow, that was weird. Sorry I left you hanging at the end of that last video, which I now call part one. That was, I had some multiple failures at the same time, and you could tell by the goofy look on my face that I was quite confused. And I'm still confused. I'm not exactly sure what went on there, but all of a sudden things were not right. So fortunately, I looked back and it looked like things were pretty much right up until failure point. So we're going to pick up where we left off um, at the end of what's now part one, and we'll just begin with part two, where we left off, and that was your business plan. And I was starting to talk about the description. Typically, business plans, they are written extremely. You have people looking at this when they start seeing typos in your business plan. Don't expect them to want to invest in anything that you're working on. If it's not, if it's not perfect, um, it's not good. So you need to make it perfect. Your real business plan. Now, I'm not expecting perfection in the business plans you turn in, but the closer to perfection it is, the happier we will all be, um, because you'll get a better grade and they're much easier to read. So it's a win-win. They may be 25 to 35 pages long. I'm I'm not looking for 25 or 35 pages in our class business plan. I'm looking for, well, I said there's no page limit, no minimum, no maximum, but I'm looking for non-repetitive, non-duplicative, cogent, concise arguments. Uh, so that's what we look for. Here you can see what the common ones might be. I'm not looking for that. Please don't give me a 35-page business plan. I just that's a painful experience for all of us. So you do provide this to your investors, your potential investors, those who might be interested in what it is that you're doing. So why are we starting this business and how are we going to make money? That's really the bottom line. You can expand on those things a little bit. There'll be a little bit more in here than just those basics, but that's what an investor is looking to see. Of course, you always have some sort of cover page that describes what you're doing, what your plan is, who the developer of the plan is, um, and maybe a confidentiality statement. Those are certainly big these days, non-disclosures and confidentiality agreements. Um, uh, a table of contents is important to have in your final document. Now, once again, I'm not a table of contents for the draft parts that you turn in is wonderful. I didn't ask specifically for that. Certainly on the final formal document, you will want a table of contents so that the reader can go directly to a particular place that they have an interest in. The executive summary is your elevator speech type document. Some people may read the executive summary and nothing else. I doubt that, but that's always possible. It is a short overview. I say that it's important to have the bottom line up front, or bluff. The bottom line up front is, well, people want to know what your business is and how you're going to make money. Present that up front so that if I'm reading the executive summary, I might just want to read the first paragraph of the executive summary because I just don't have time. I'm very busy. You might get some investors who are such busy folks, and you don't want to take more of their time than necessary. And you want to make sure that if they look at your document, they see the most important things when they start at the top. You can also include that in another sense, the executive summary is the bottom line up front, right? Without the details to follow, it's the guts of what you're trying to accomplish. It does provide everything, not in detail, but in overview form of what the reader really needs to know. Sometimes executive summaries spill over and are a couple of pages. In our business plan and your business plan for this class, it's 1 page, limited to 1 page. And that just means you have to work harder to make it fit 1 page sometimes. But you know what? It's a good thing to have to do. You do write it last, not first. That's why I'm not even asking for an executive summary until the December 8th turn-in part of your business plan. Okay, you can see these, overview of the company. You just, pardon me, describe the company with these elements. I'm gonna expand on these here. Mission, vision, objectives, goals. Sometimes these terms get all mixed up, and it's hard to distinguish sometimes between mission and vision. But we're gonna do our best here. Mission statement defines why do you exist? What is it you do? Why are you different? And this is something that should set you apart, that should establish some sort of boundaries, right, for what you do and what you don't do. Now, you don't spend time talking about what you don't do. You spend time talking about what you do. And here's some examples. We build quality homes and neighborhoods that exceed the expectations we have established with our customers. So quality homes exceeding expectations, right? Our mission is to be a dynamic team providing the highest quality construction services available. Floor's mission is built on successfully delivering products in a safe, efficient, and economical manner. That's interesting. I'm not sure I would have used that. I would have said it quite that way. Okay, so it's built on doing this. Well, what is it? What is the mission? That doesn't make any sense to me. Anyway, not all mission statements are perfect. And you do want to use as few words as possible, but don't be evil. You know, it's turned out, while I don't think evil is in the eyes of the beholder, it seems like a lot of people do. So I'm not sure. Google's was clever when it first came up. Not sure it's clever anymore if Google is the one who gets to define what evil is. But that's between me and Google, I guess. So you have a mission statement. What is your mission? What is the purpose? Why do you exist? What is the focus of your organization, your company? A vision is really broad. And this is, okay, within 10 years, I want to be here. Within maybe 5 years, I want to be here. Within 20 years, my legacy is, right? All these are visions. It's looking out into the future. And it should be somewhat inspiring. It should be something that you can hang your hat on. We are headed this way. We are going to do this. This is what we're going to achieve. And you can see a couple of examples here that I won't belabor. You can read them. Objectives. Now these, so you've got this, here's why we exist, here's where we're headed, and here's how we're going to get there. So this is how we're going to achieve, get to this vision, earn our vision, if you will. Now, I said here that they're broad and timeless statements. You know, they're kind of timeless, but they really aren't, in that they should change. You want to, the objectives should, you have to change your objectives on occasion to help you achieve the vision. It's kind of like sailing a boat, and your vision is kind of where you're headed. One could say that's a goal, but that's another story. Your vision is where you're headed, and your objectives are to get there, certainly, but how do you get there? There's different ways to get there, and the objectives may need to be tweaked in order to do that. You should look at financial and non-financial issues. Uh, you need to sometimes have stretch goals, which is, I think, a little different. The term objectives and goals gets confused quite a bit. I think sometimes here's my personal view. It's like the objective is to score a touchdown. There is a goal line. You score a touchdown by crossing the goal line. That's how you do it. So a goal is a very specific thing you can put your finger on. The objective is the movement part. So you want these to be realistic, but you want to challenge yourself. You don't want to be complacent, and everything has to be measurable, right? There's a friend of mine, and I don't think he said it, maybe Peter Drucker, great management guru, said, you can't manage what you can't measure. And that's very true. You cannot manage what you cannot measure. So you need to be able to measure where you are and measure your progress toward these, toward goals and in achieving objectives. And a time dimension is important as well. Expand market into new geographical areas is not very, you can measure that. Well, how are you going to measure it, right? By the number of new areas that you're in. So you might set goals around that objective and say, we're going to enter into 2 new geographical areas per year. Could be. Increase company profitability by 3% over the next 10 years. Now that's very specific, right? Smart, specific, measurable, art. I can't remember what the rest of them are. They're SMART goals. You can look that up. Okay, now here we'll talk about goals as a short-term goals. These are very defined. These are well defined to help get you there. This is like my sailing example. This would be like tacking, right? You're on a close reach, and you head this way for a while, and then you tack, and you're going the other direction, and you tack, and you go the other direction. So that would be how you're going to accomplish your objectives, and this is going to set some targets to get you down that road. You don't have a way to get to these long-term visionary numbers without making short-term steps to get there. And you have to be headed, you have to know the direction you're headed, and you have to measure the progress you're making in that direction. That's a good 2-year goal. Increase the annual volume of work to $60 million per year. That's very, very effective. Okay, moving on. I'm just checking my stats just to make sure everything's still copacetic here. You want to include a brief history, who you are, where the idea came from. It can be interesting, should be interesting. It's telling a story, painting a picture, heartfelt. Maybe there are arguments about heartfelt, if you will. Decisions should be based on facts, not emotions. So be a little bit careful, but you do want to make sure that people are really understand what it is that you're up to. So and how you
Okay, let's hope that that works. It looked like things were breaking up a little bit, so we'll see how that works. So history, only you know your history there. Um, Products and services. What are you going to supply? How are you going to supply it? What's your market position relative to your competition? You also need to know, not for all audiences, but for some, and certainly it needs to be specified, the how you're organized. So who are the owners? Who has an equity stake in the business? What is the split of this ownership? What about you? You will have a founder's agreement, and this will be a legal document. It'll specify all these elements here on the slide, and you'll need to establish the business, establish whether it's an S corp or an LLC or a C corp if you're going big time, uh, things like that. That needs to be described and detailed. You need to select a name. So this will help perhaps differentiate you from your competition, or be something that your customers can easily still having microphone problems here.
Something that your customers can easily recognize your company. You'll notice some big and tall stores. Well, we know who they're for, right? Product driven Whole Foods. That's a good product driven name. And the image, things that people remember, like Ben and Jerry's. So I don't know if you're a Ben and Jerry's fan. I don't particularly care for their ice cream, but man, their name is well known. So selecting a name is important. You have to select one that's not been taken. So again, you get assistance with doing this sort of thing. And here's some of them. If you're going to work internationally, you got to be careful about the words you use, and certainly you're going to need an internet presence. So you need to think about that. Be careful searching for domain names, because there are people watching domain name searches who will snap it out from in front of you. So kind of determine what you think you might like it to be, and then just go for it. It's a real competitive market. Okay, then we get into the industry analysis, and we've talked a reasonable amount about industry analysis. So I just encourage you to look at these slides and to move forward with some of these ideas, talking about the size, your competition. Where do you get this sort of information? Well, gee, that's a good question. You've got all sorts of economic indicators, GDP. Pardon me. You need to look at the North American industry classification system that gives you codes for particular industries. It helps you search out data. Bureau of Labor Statistics, construction sources specifically, all of those will get you information on your market, even down to some locales or regions. So that's going to be very useful to find look at your target market. And you can look at, as you define what industry you're in and what segment you're in within that, certainly that NAICS, North American Industry Classification, will help you get that. And notice that you want to scope it properly. So the example there is the boots. That's pretty narrow scope, and the shoe industry would be a broad scope. And so again, you can get out on the interwebs and find a lot of that. Okay, you're going to be promoting your organization and considering industry size, growth rate, all these factors. And you want to display the information in multi-year format. You want to be able to demonstrate trends, as I discussed earlier. When you have somebody looking at the data, it is much easier to see trends graphically. It's much easier to understand data graphically, provided it's a well-built graph. So you want to be careful and not make the reader do work when they look at the graph and have to study it and figure it out. You want a graph that when the reader looks at it, it's obvious the story that you're telling. And so graphs like that are useful, and use them to your advantage. Again, regional, local information is better than national information, but you need to be very honest with your potential investors and your customers, and you need to say, okay, hey, this speaks for my business, but this doesn't. Here's a negative indicator. I don't have an answer for this. I think it's outweighed by all these positive indicators, but you need to be honest with the data that you see. So here's examples. Industry growth rate. Sales projections, again, more growth data. You want to make sure that the data are presented as data, and then you should provide an interpretation. And an interpretation that takes those data and translates those data and interpretation into your company and your company's future. And that's what you want to be able to provide to those who are reading your document. Here's just an example of some market analysis. I'm not a big pie chart fan. I would see this better, especially since these pies are all pretty much the same size, except for it looks like restaurant. I'd rather see it, like a bar graph or something. I know pies can be popular, unless you're pointing out one piece of that pie and you segment it out and it's significantly different than the others. I find them hard to swallow. But there's an example of one right there, so I must not think they're too bad. You need to make sure that the readers can tell that you know your market and you're going to be successful in it. The market is big enough for your business. Now, this may mean, narrowing the market because your business is narrower than the large market that you have data for. Pardon me. But you need to demonstrate that to them, and you need to include these factors. And I'll focus on the last two here in the discussion: barriers to entry. What barriers are there to entry? Does it require a lot of money? Does it require a lot of equipment? Does it require a lot of special technology? What are the things that keep other people out of this particular market? If it's a low barrier to entry market, certainly that's good for you and that you'll be able to get into it. It also means a lot of people can get into it. So maybe that pie is chopped up in a lot more pieces. If there are high barriers to entry and you have the answer, right? You've got the skeleton key that gets you in. That's a good thing, because that means that the competitors you're looking at now may be the same competitors 5 years from now, because it's so hard to get in, but you can get in. If you can make that argument, that's a good one as well. So on the demographics and segmentation side, who are your customers? What's the market value of those customers for your product or service? And on the who are your customers, right? So who are they? Who would they be? Who could you sneak into? Future potential customers. What's the market value now, and what's the market value with those potential customers? Industry characteristics. We've done this. You did an industry analysis. You didn't necessarily look at the structure of the participants. Key ratios, success factors would be something. What makes businesses successful? What in existing businesses, what makes them successful? And typically, you can intuit some of that, and you can also, you could even go and ask leadership in that organization. So why do you think you're successful? Sometimes they'll tell you. A little bit on industry structure here. So is it very concentrated? Few competitors, dominated by a few? Are there a whole bunch of, little competitors running around, anthill type competition? And then an industry that is attractive is one that you can get into but has high barriers to entry. It doesn't have good substitutes for the products that you have to offer, and has limited supplier and buyer power. That means you're more in charge of managing your suppliers and managing your buyers, right? Your customers. So here's a spider chart. Some of you have seen the web here of how attractive an industry would be to you. And here's some of the elements, the threat of new entrants, bargaining power suppliers, bargaining power buyers, rivalry, and substitute products and services. If you can assess where you are on each one of these, you can get an idea of how successful you might be. And the way that the scales are on these particular items, if you're way down here, you're in pretty good shape, if you can get in there. Barriers to entry, I'm not going to spend much time on that. You can see what some of those barriers can be, and you can read those for yourself. If you're a new entrant to a market, of course, those barriers to entry are only slightly different, but general economic conditions and market conditions are two. How your customers are going to react, your competitors are going to react. So, if your competitors may see your entry as such a threat that they all of a sudden drop their prices to the point where you can't compete anymore. And that has happened. So you need to be cognizant of that. And of course, it depends on geographic region. It depends on all these other market factors that we've talked about, how your competitors can react. And finally, there's government regulations. And here we go again. Here's one thing where the government can put up barriers or fewer barriers, maybe from one region to the next, that you need to be aware of. There may be things that you do that you need to be absolutely cognizant of what the government regulations are in that area. You need help. You need an expert. There's your legal team, right, who can help to sift those out, because typically wading through the regulations is not for the faint of heart. And so they would have those, you need experts to have those available for you. What about all of the participants in your market? You need to analyze them, find out who they are, and look at their individual market shares. You need to look at where your differentiated business fits in with those major players. Strengths and weaknesses, the SWOT analysis is often applied here to see what your strengths are vis-a-vis your competitors and what your weaknesses are, where you're short, where you need to make more effort and build up. Industry segmentation, of course, drives that. And you would really like to segment the industry in such a way as to you be the sole provider, right, to a segment of that industry. That puts you in the catbird seat, as it were. And then, of course, you're looking at ratios. You've done some of that. You looked at a competitor at a publicly traded, and you compared the financial ratios to industry standard, if you will, ratios. So you understand how to do that part of the analysis. We've beat this horse, I think, to death. Looking at competition, there's always ways to look at competition. Here's some euros for you. So once again, this is an international type class. And this is the one thing about this slide is that it's a formal way to divide the company into different sorts of attributes that define these companies, and you can look at where you stand in relation to those across the attributes. So my company is coming in with a high price, that's our market, and with superior quality. So we want to face the competition. We're going to be on the high end of the competition here, and we're going to be high quality, high price, one location. Hopefully, people, those in the know, the Pradas of the world, right? You want to flock to our store. That's how we have differentiated ourselves here. Okay, key success factors. How will you know that you've been a success? Well, you want to be competent in all success factors. You want to excel in some. And these factors vary. Different industries. Certainly, the success factors for a small grocery farm to market type shop is going to be different than it is for electronics repair. The success factors for a large commercial construction firm are going to be different than they are for a smaller residential construction firm. You can look at some of them here. Brand name recognition, do people know who you are? What about your access to distribution channels? The quality of the work that you do, products or service. The price doesn't always show up, but very often, obviously, shows up. Quality of customer service, key element there. What about industry trends? Again, we've pretty much beat the horse, except we've looked at financial trends, and that's on the economic side. But what about social trends? So environmental doesn't mean green, right? Environmental here is the environment in which the companies are working. So what are the trends in technologically? What are the trends politically? Are there any political trends and regulatory trends? And then, of course, are there trends in the business that are something that you need to take note of? Particularly fast innovation. There are some businesses where innovation is very rapid, and I know in the construction industry there have been some very innovative elements that have come along in the past 10 years that fundamentally changed the way things are done. So, and that included some technological advantages, I'm sorry, trends and increases as well. So those are important to consider. You're not going to take all of these into account. You just can't get the data, and you're not going to be able to do it. I'm talking about for our project. So don't be overwhelmed. You're going to need to pick and choose those things that you made a note once about technology, and you're going to look at that trend, and you're not going to worry about regulatory trends. I'm with you. That's fine. In your real business plan, remember, you don't want to start a business and have it fail. So you're going to need to be much more thorough in a real business plan. You should have a statement about, okay, long term. I gave you my mission. I talked about our vision for the company. Now let's talk about what are the prospects long term, even beyond maybe where we said we wanted to be in 10 years. You want to be consistent, but you don't provide new stuff. This is your kind of your interpretation and data-based interpretation, not emotion-based interpretation of what the long-term prospects are for your organization based on all of the data that you have seen. So certainly when you do this analysis, strategic plan, market analysis, and looking at the industry, it does affect the other sections of the plan. So you're not doing this for the sake of doing this. You're doing this for the sake of gathering data and information that you can form. You can create this vision of where your company fits, how your company is going to compete in the marketplace. So it's a means to an end. It's not the end in itself, right? And I know that in an assignment, for our class assignment, it's often more an end in itself, just to check the box of I did this for the assignment. Yes, you need to do it for the assignment, but you should look at it as it's leading you toward drawing a conclusion and learning something about your own organization. And that's where you need to head. Okay, finally, these are some of the regulations I wanted to end with. This is kind of a downer, but these are the things that you don't need to be as concerned about for me as you do for yourself in your business plan. There are a lot of big and small, local, regional, state, national laws related to a lot of things with respect to your company. Labor laws, marketing laws, competitive laws, online business laws, what you can do and what you can't do, privacy laws. Privacy was always not a huge deal in education, and then we get FERPA, and in healthcare, there was privacy, but it wasn't. It was just doctor and patient, and doctors left messages sometimes, on the phone. But now with HIPAA, so we've got all kinds of privacy things that you need to consider. NIOSH, OSHA, in the workplace, particularly in construction, you're constantly on the lookout for unsafe conditions. And so occupational safety and health is critical. You've got a lot of laws to wade through there. Intellectual property. Are you getting any? Are you using any? Do you have any? Hello? Right? Big deal. So and you need to stay compliant, and you need to make sure in your business plan that you recognize these things. And that just goes back to speaking to the need of having your team in place. Your team is your team is critical to your success, and so in each one of these areas, you may need to even bring in a new team member to make sure that you're compliant. Well, this has been a whirlwind discussion of strategic and marketing planning and analysis, and I wish we had more time. I've tried to keep this segment one that aborted at the end, and then segment two is interesting that it quit right there in the transition, which was good. Part two, down to the 75 minutes we have for class. So, and it's been 70, so we're pretty close. I think that I'll shut off there, and we'll be planning for next Tuesday's class. We only have 2 more classes before Thanksgiving. I should also mention at the end of this video that I will be extending the due date for the second installment of the first part of the plan. That's the one that was going to be due November 23rd, the Monday after the beginning of Thanksgiving break. And I got a request. I think it's a legitimate request. I didn't think about how busy you all might be since you're not coming back. You're going to be busy, many of you be busy packing up and loading up to head out for Thanksgiving since you're not coming back to the Berg. So that is an extra load that I had not thought of. So that will be extended out a couple of days to Wednesday at midnight. Now, again, I mean, that's kind of a crummy time, right? You know, the midnight right before Thanksgiving. Some of you will be having a feast on Thanksgiving Day, but turn it in early. You know, as a matter of fact, don't wait till the last minute, and make sure that you get it turned in on time. So that new due date will be midnight on the 25th of November. And so that's it for this video. I won't drone on any longer. I hope that you all have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you live at 8 a.m. next Tuesday. I guess that's the 17th. Yeah, the 17th of November for class, and we'll be moving right along. Last couple of quick topics, and I'll also talk about the oral presentation, which Mitch and I are coming together on how we're going to handle that. And if spoiler alert, you will be preparing your own video that you turn in for your presentation. So that gives you a little more flexibility and gives us a little more flexibility, actually. And that means that that will serve for many of us, many of you, all of you, maybe, as a lot of class time. So class time will be limited after Thanksgiving. Have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you next week.